With the startup complete, we're now ready to move on to the next stage, which is the media process test. Now this test is a two-stage test. The first part of the test is really a confidence test. It must render a project which I call the biometric scanner, and what I'm looking for is not so much it rendering the project but analyzing the MPEG-4 file to make sure it conforms to the standards. If it does not, I am not going to continue, or generally I do not continue. If it does, it's guaranteed to continue and perform what you see before you. It renders the game anime project and makes the game anime. So let's do a walk round through the screen that I have here. So we'll start off with the top right, or left, shall I say. It shows the i7. Now the i7 is a quad core. That means each core has two threads. A thread is known as a logical CPU. So you can see 8 logical CPUs. I want to see a balance of workload across those CPUs. So that covers the logical CPUs of the i7. Now I've also dragged out 2 graphs. One graph gives me the summary of the thread usage of those logical CPUs, and the other one is telling me exactly what's going on with the CPU itself and what's the total usage of the CPU. Then on the far right is my executive dashboard, and here I'm looking at a couple of things. The first one is the bottleneck. What caused the bottleneck, if it arose, is shown here. So that's bottleneck and burden by, what was loaded on the CPU at the time, and also another quick summary of the CPU and GPU usage. Now talking about the GPU, this area is solely dedicated to the GPU. You can find out what GPU is being used because the Asus has 2, the i7 has the HD4000, and I'm using the NVIDIA graphics, as you can see here. Now of the GPU, I'm really just interested in this area, the GPU load. So that covers the GPU usage, the CPU usage, and parts of the system. But let's not forget the star of the show, which is the Adobe Premiere Pro, the editor itself. So that completes the walkthrough. We're now ready to commence the actual media process. Of all the video editors I tested, Adobe's Premiere Pro has to be the most feature-rich media building process I come across. So let me go over the Media Builder dialog. This section is all about the actual project itself, or the clip you want to render, and you can confirm it's the right one by looking here at the duration. This side is all about the settings. Now the global settings is the export settings. Here you would set the file format or standard you want to go by. Now MPEG-4 is part of the H.264 standard, so that's why that's there. And then you have the section which covers the video, audio, multiplexer, and in the case of Adobe, because it's such a feature rich, you've got many other things that you can also set here. Now if you're doing a 1080p project, or if you're going to broadcast like over the internet, you need to be able to set this to high, the profile to high, and the level from 4 to higher. Now the bit rate is basically, I always see this as data rate when I'm dealing with video, and I would say bit rate when I'm dealing with audio. But here you are, you've got the data settings here. You can actually set the bits per second here, and here it's a very important setting here, but this is the group of pictures pattern, or GOP. And finally we're at this section, which I think some of the data is a bit tucked away, namely this one here. The estimated file size I think should be a lot bigger and more prominent. The metadata is useful if you're a freelancer and you want to put copyright information in, but these are basically standard options you want to do on the build. First, do you want to queue it to create a batch process, or do you want to export now, or cancel because you accidentally got here. So now you're going to see me go through and use this dialog or media builder in anger. As I said before, if you're doing anything in HD, which is 1080p, even 720p, you should use the high profile, especially if you're going to use the internet. Now, if you see here, this is the complete sort of options that you've got with the metadata. And as with all of these, the biometric scanner is a very quick build, but it took 30 seconds. And strangely, Adobe use the main concept encoder, and it's exactly got the same kind of performance as Sony. The container passes but no HRD data. Yet I know you can actually get this to store this, and I'll show you it. And the that reference video editor, Movie Edit Pro, does give you that HRD data. So what's going on here, I do not know. It should be there, and a professional product should always be there, especially for a freelancer, because it's their way of proving that the product they made worked. I'm going to stop here, get off my high horse or soapbox, and just get on with it. The game anime is the next phase I am going to go on, even though this failed, and generally I would have stopped, but this is Adobe. I really need to know how this application performs. Now it's saying it's going to do it in an hour and 30 minutes. Don't be surprised when you start off. Most video editors, they might require to create a scenario where it's balancing the workload across the CPUs. But what is a bit disconcerting is these CPUs are being hammered so earlier on and nothing seen on the GPU. Now it could be that it didn't see any value in using the GPU, but anyway, let's look at the process resource. This is the system, this is Adobe. What you should be looking at is a slight difference between the two if there's anything else going on with the system. But if looking at this, I'm seeing that the CPU threads all set to 8 from the actual Adobe, and looking at the system, it is actually the editor that's the huge load of this the system resources, but it's not using it properly. Now this is me going straight to the end. This took 2 hours and 40 minutes, not at 1 hour and 30. It still seems to be doing some form of activity. The CPU activity has died down, but I've got a lot of I/O operations. So whatever is the rendering process going on here, and as I said before, they use main concept. This seems to be something the way Adobe have got this to do the build, because none of the other applications take so long to do this IOPS. Now, as I said, it estimated 1 hour 30 odd minutes. It took 2 hours 40 minutes, and this IOPS or IO operations continued for a further 30 minutes. So this went over 3 hours, and that to me is very bad. You can see from the executive dashboard, it is all Adobe doing this IOPS, and look at it, it is massive. It was so long, literally, that gone to lunch is not a joke. I literally could not hang around. Analyzing the file, same as Sony, the container passed, no HRD data. Now, what's annoying with this is Adobe sat on the H.264 standards committee, which is where MPEG-4 and their Flash for video comes from, and they know the importance of the HRD data, and if you're a professional, you want that. Now, I've given no stars to this, not because of any animosity. I have nothing against Adobe, but a professional product that's asking 540 odd euros as a rental of this application, and no technical support. I couldn't get hold of technical support for 1 month. There's a video on there explaining this fault. No response back from the forum, because the forum is not the place for this, but I couldn't get hold of technical support. How bad is that? This is a professional product, not professionally supported.